Hi, I'm Dr. Jim Carlson from the Grove Animal Hospital and Holistic Center, and we're doing a custom holistic analysis for our 6-year-old Chihuahua, case number 01765. This little Chihuahua has had a chronic diarrhea problem for quite some time, and we wanted to get to the root of the problem. And custom holistic testing tells us why. So what is this little Chihuahua trying to do? And so if we look at this analysis, we see that most of the numbers are green or balanced, but then we see some chronic stuff going on down here. So first of all, the lower small intestine, endocrine system control, nervous system, and lymphatics. On the stress side, we see that the sensory circuit, TW3 or endocrine system for the sensory part of the body was stressed. So we noticed that our allergy points were okay. We're going to go over the sensitivities in a minute. But this little guy has a problem with the diarrhea because the pituitary and pineal senses all of the information from the outside: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Sends it to the adrenal, adrenal to the thyroid, thyroid to the pancreas. And the intestinal tract has its own nervous system called the enteric nervous system, which communicates back to the brain. So in times of stress, the body goes into a fight or flight response and acts on the intestinal tract to release any intestinal contents, because if you're in flight, you don't want to have a full intestine. And so it's a natural mechanism. Chihuahuas are kind of known for having nervous emotions. And so this can be one of those behavioral things that we would work through a number of things. First of all, is just building confidence in this Chihuahua. So training, behavioral training, walks, things like that to build confidence. Number 2 is that we want to use a conditioning drop to help reestablish normal balance between the brain and the intestinal tract. And then also we want to help with a product called B12 by injection. What B12 does is it acts on the enteric nervous system, the immune system, and also digestion. So B12 is really good for the intestinal tract here. It does have a calming effect on the brain, so B12 works great right there. And we would do 3 injections spaced about 2 weeks apart to reestablish this system. The drops will, for 3 months, rebalance the weakness and stress in the body. And so we're going to use a product called Digesticom because it's triggered towards digestion, and we're dealing with the intestinal tract. So we're going to use Digesticom 5 drops twice a day for 5 days, 5 drops once a day for 5 days, and then just 2 drops a day for the rest of the 3-month treatment. And then we're going to follow up with a retest. Okay? So what about the sensitivities? Why aren't we allergic to anything? And so sensitivities, as long as you're exposed to it, you might be sensitive and may show symptoms. But if you're not exposed to it, then no symptoms. And so this gets a little busy, but if we look at the breakdown, our sensitivity report goes into the file by group, and then we show the file by category, environmentals, and then we get down to the specifics, household chemicals. So we see that household chemicals do cause some weakness in the body. Okay. This one's interesting because we see environmentals again, and then epidermals for the skin, and then we go into the animal category, and this one is spiders. So we see that a number of spiders, so if the Chihuahua is bitten by a spider, could cause a skin reaction. And so
how is that different than just a skin reaction you'd see from a regular spider bite if you were like super sensitive to it?
Well, a regular spider bite could cause just general irritation, but if you were sensitive to it, it could cause a welt or ulceration or major infection.
Okay.
And if we get down to groups by food, we see vegetables, and then we also see grains. So if we flip the page to get into those specific, we see that a lot of dogs are allergic to wheat and gluten. and then down here corn. So if we're not exposed to grains, that would be something that we would want to continue. But also, if we were exposed to grains, we would want to minimize that exposure. Also, this one's interesting. If we come over, we see rice. Well, rice is in a lot of dog foods, and it's supposed to be, in general, hypoallergenic and good for the digestive tract. But in this case, the Chihuahua is sensitive to it. So if we're getting a chicken and rice formula, for example, that's going to continually cause a reaction in the intestinal tract. So we would want to evaluate the diet and see what ingredients we're talking about as far as this particular food. Okay? And vegetables, some dogs do get vegetables. And that can be in a small amount. If we feed our pet a little bit of our food, if we make our pet's food as far as a treat, some of the vegetables that they may eat, some dogs really like them, and then we see there's a number of sensitivities. Again, corn, and then there's a few others that we'd go over in more detail after we review the sensitivity at home. I would talk it over with you to see if there's any of those vegetables in specific that you were exposing the Chihuahua to. And finally, this is another interesting one with epidermals in animals, is that we see insects. So we see wasps, houseflies, dust mites. We get down to ants, and even we add a couple more spiders there too, which I'm not sure why we put spiders in the insect category, but at the same time, bumblebees. So any stinging insect, certainly dust mites can be irritating to the skin. Dust mites are in every household, even the best clean household. So it's not insinuating that you have a dirty household if you have dust mites, because they're everywhere. So when we get to the root of it, we want to know everything about what's going on that can contribute to the symptoms that we're seeing.
These also are interesting because these sensitivities, we do see those from time to time. I mean, a lot, actually, on the upper one there. Can you go into that a little bit?
A good point. Environmentals, again, a lot of environmentals that showed up, and this one's fossil fuels. So if we think about traveling in the car, exhaust fumes from ethanol. We also had natural gas, some diesel fumes. And so if we're in the household, especially during the winter time, and we're exposed to propane or natural gas fumes, that can create irritation not only to the skin, but to the GI tract. And it also can trigger sensory excitement. So back to here, smell is one of those senses, can trigger the pituitary and pineal to become excited. And then we rev up this mechanism, and then we're also gonna rev up the intestinal tract. So there again, if we're sensitive to something in the environment, even if we're smelling it, that can cause diarrhea too. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting when you get to the root of it, where all these pathways are going, to better understand why we're having chronic diarrhea.
So things like natural gas and propane are processed in the home. There are different compounds that come out of that, right? Or something that comes out of that can make you sick.
That's right. There's different chemical constituents that once breathed in, if the patient is sensitive to it, it's going to cause excitement in the central nervous system or respiratory tract. In this case, the respiratory tract was balanced, so we don't see a respiratory sensitivity. But at the same time, we did see a nervous system sensitivity, so we get right back to that sensory function up here. So it's amazing that we often think about diarrhea as being a target area for the intestine. So enteritis, food allergies, virus, bacteria, those kind of things. But in this case, it has to do with the nervous system. So once we work on the nervous system and bring that down a bit, we should see the response be much better, and we should see the diarrhea start going away and eventually resolve it.
Also, you will be putting some herbs with this, and we'll include those in the packet for them to pick up, right?
That's right. We're going to be going back to help with the central nervous system and the excitement there. So we're using a product called Shen Calmer. It's going to be one of those that we would use for the next few weeks.